Hi there and welcome to the second lesson in the theme about social science. This lesson is about and simply titled Understanding, and now we're going to be taking a closer look at why the need to be understood and why understanding for other people is such a crucial part of great communication. Because when it comes to the social aspects, when it comes to the difference between us as human beings, one thing we all have in common is the need to be understood. The need to be seen, to be heard, to get attention, but also at the same time to be understood as human beings. That's something that we all search for, and the more we can give to other people, the more we can make an effort to put ourselves in other people's shoes and to understand the situation, the stronger relationship we will get to that certain person that we're talking to. But most of the time, when it comes down to understanding somebody and trying to create empathy for that certain person, a lot of us might be a little bit intimidated or afraid. Because what if we're trying to create empathy? What if we're trying to understand the person that we're talking to, but we might not be getting the exact picture just right, and we might be failing in our assumptions? What if we're trying to understand somebody, but we basically misunderstood them? And because of this hesitance, because that we are afraid that we're not going to be able to pinpoint exactly how that certain person feels, we take a step back and we avoid it altogether. But what we need to understand about understanding is that we actually get rewarded from the attempt to understand somebody. In the following exercise, we're going to be talking more about what we call labeling, which is basically trying to understand other people. And when we're trying to understand other people, but we're not getting it just right, they might correct us. But what we need to understand as human beings is that whenever we're being corrected for our attempt to understand somebody, whenever we're trying to create empathy, but we're not getting it just right and we're actually getting corrected by a certain person, it's actually positive. That means that we should not be afraid to try to understand somebody, try to verbalize how they might be feeling or what they might be going through, because if we don't understand it and they will correct us for it, it's actually a positive thing. Try to think of the last time you needed to correct somebody. Maybe they had a wrong assumption about you, or maybe they were just doing a certain task in a slightly wrong way and you needed to correct them. Even though you might not be willing to admit it, there's something very nice about allowing yourself to correct somebody. Isn't that true? Whenever you have to correct somebody, you know that it might not be the best side of yourself, but you still feel a certain sense of satisfaction when you are allowing yourself to correct somebody. See, this sensation of satisfaction, you're actually giving that to the certain person that is correcting you. So let's say you're making an assumption and saying, well, that might have been tough about a certain person's situation, and saying, well, you know what, it wasn't actually that tough. Just a simple correction that you are allowing that certain person to correct you is actually making a positive imprint on that person that you're talking to. The only obstacle is your own maybe ego or satisfaction, because when other people are correcting you, it might be hurting your ego a little bit. But if you can stay curious, if you can stay attentive to what they're saying and be focusing on getting their certain sensation and feeling just right, you're on a really, really good and positive track, and you're creating a stronger relationship. Sometimes we are experiencing that other people might be dissatisfied with our behavior. Maybe they are coming to us complaining about something, whether we are working at our workplace and a customer is complaining, or we're at home and our partner doesn't think that we're doing a good enough job. We will always receive this certain complaint, and we will always be dealing with people who might be a little bit upset. And the most natural behavior for us as human beings is to be very offensive, is to be very, very defensive also when we are accused of something. Let's say that somebody is approaching us with a certain negative vibe around what we're doing. The most natural reaction will be to take everything very personal. will cross our arms, we will be very dissatisfied, and we will start to complain back at that person that we're talking to. But the truth is that if we can stay more connected to being curious rather than being very defensive right away, we're actually on a more positive track. The truth is that while you might have something to do with the reason why they are dissatisfied, the truth is that you are most likely not the main cause of it. That means that when someone is approaching you with a complaint or being angry with you, instead of being defensive right away, taking everything personal, see if you can stay curious. See if you can prioritize the understanding for their need and their situation higher than the need for you to defend yourself. When someone is approaching you with maybe a negative attitude, see if you can stay curious and wonder why they're being this certain way. See if you can wonder and be curious to why they're behaving the way they are. Obviously, you might have something to do with it, but see if you can trace back to where they're coming from. What did they enter with? Why they're behaving the way they are. It's very, very challenging because once again, our natural behavior is to become defensive. But see if you can stay curious, even though you can sense that your maybe survival state is kicking in. See if you can stay curious and turn this into something about them rather than necessarily yourself and your certain situation. It's not in a sense of blaming them. It's not in a sense of saying it's their fault, but trying to understand their situation is the essential part of the topic of understanding and the essential part of empathy. When it comes to empathy and understanding, it's one of the most important, if not the most important part about great communication. So once again, see how many times you can stay curious instead of getting carried away yourself with a certain argument or situation you're in. If you can stay curious in a tight spot, you're on a great track, and you will create very, very strong relationships with the people you are around. See if you can fuel this curiosity. And in the next exercise, we're going to be taking a closer look at what we previously mentioned, which is called labeling. A very effective and simple technique to actually utilize what we talked about and create great understanding with the people that you are around.